If you've ever watched a board member freeze the moment fundraising comes up, this episode is for you. My guest today has spent 20 plus years working at the intersection of nonprofit fundraising and board governance, and she has this simple but powerful belief. Your board members aren't afraid to ask for money. They're afraid because nobody gave them the story to tell. We're going to talk about why boards disengage, how to use storytelling to build real confidence, and what consistent board development actually looks like from week to week. I'm Max Kringen, and this is Tell Well the podcast. And before we dive in, if this conversation is hitting close to home, you need to be at Well Told, our nonprofit storytelling conference coming up April 30th in Fargo. It's a one-day, practical, honest, story-focused learning built specifically for nonprofit leaders. And today's guest is going to be there in person. So grab your spot at welltoldconference.com. Now, let's get into it with my new friend and yours, Christal M. Cherry.
Over the rainbow.
Christal M. Cherry, welcome to Tell All the podcast.
Hey, Max. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are so dang excited that you're here, and we're so dang excited that you are coming to Fargo for the second annual Well Told Nonprofit Storytelling Conference.
Me too. I've never been to Fargo. I'm excited.
I am so excited to show you around. And then we also just got done talking about you actually have to travel to Fargo to meet somebody who lives in the same town as you.
Yes, exactly. Clay, he is just a wonderful guy. And like I said, we circled around each other in different conferences and things, but we've not actually met in person. And so it'll be great to finally just give him a big old fat teddy bear hug.
It's going to be so great. So, Christal, for folks who don't know who you are, who is Christal and why do you care about this work?
Oh my God, it's so complex. No. Um, Oh goodness, I'm a disruptor. I am someone who cares passionately about communities and missions and our leaning in and being part of making communities better, which is what nonprofit work is all about, right? And so I've been playing in this playground for 20 plus years, first as a fundraiser and now working primarily with nonprofit boards. And I love it. And I pivoted to this area because I really felt it was important for me to get a full understanding of leadership of these nonprofits. So that I can talk to them about how they can best lead and govern and support one another and support the executive director. I mean, all that matters because if you have all that goodness at the top, it trickles down. It really does. It really does permeate down into what's happening with staff. And they feel it, your donors will feel it, your volunteers will feel it. And so I figured the best place to go was right to the top, right? I'm going to work with these folks, learn what good governance is, and then get out here and actually, because you can do all the reading and all the best practices, but get out and talk to people. And now I've been doing this for 6.5 years, and I've worked with, oh God, I can't even tell you how many boards, small grassroots, hospitals, foundations, libraries, the whole thing. I have a little experience now with so many different nonprofits. So now when I'm out talking to people, I can say, based on what I've learned and what I've seen going on in the real world, this is what I think might work for you. But as much as I'm sharing and guiding, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
So it's great.
I love that. Okay, so let's dig into it because you've worked with a lot of boards, right?
Yes.
Especially over those 6.5 years. And even before that, like you got to see both the good and the bad and all the different sides. I'm curious, when you walk into a room and you see things are just like not working, what patterns show up again and again?
Patterns are lack of communication, lack of synergy between the board chair and the executive director, boards being unprepared, not really sure what their roles and responsibilities are. They haven't been given the tools necessary for them to succeed. The culture might be off. You might have some folks who are really quiet and don't really speak up. They've not been empowered to speak up. And so all of those things, and then you have, of course, the old guard who's been on the board probably way too long, who are cliquish. They all know each other. And then you have the 3 or 4 new people who are just kind of sitting around going, So I think all of that, right? And so there's so many things that need to happen to make a board, to make it all click, to make all the cylinders click. And any one of those things that not working will stop that cog from moving round and round. And so that's what I go in and try to talk to the client. Let's sit down. Let's unpack what's going on with your board. And I have all the questions that I ask, and then I can usually figure out, usually about 10 minutes in, this is what's going on. So, yeah.
Was there a moment in your career where you realized, like, this is the work that I'm meant to do? Like, was there a situation or working with a specific board that made you say, like, someone needs to fix this and Crystal's going to do that?
Hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of return clients, which is a good thing. That means they liked what I did the first time and they invited me back. So that means things were successful. But yeah, no, this is great for me because I'm a type A personality. I like talking to people. I like being in community. I like hearing what people are living through and how it's impacting them. And then I've done the work, so I feel confident and what I'm talking about, right? And so it puts me in a good position. I work at the intersection of fundraising and board work, which is great, right? Because I have the background in fundraising.
Yeah.
Fundraising is a major pain point for boards. And so the fact that I have some knowledge about that is helpful. And I often spend a lot of time trying to just calm people down. It's not the F word, I promise you. We're going to get through this fundraising thing. So, but I do so in a way that's human and human centered, and I don't, and no judgment. No one was born with a PhD in board development, right? Right? And so, no judgment, and just really coming from a place of we're all in this space because we want to do good work together. So let's start there. Let's give each other grace. And I think people get disarmed when they realize I'm not going to come in and start pointing fingers and assigning blame to them about what they haven't done. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to say, okay, this is what it's been, and now that we recognize it, how can we fix it? There
Oh,
may be a quick fix, and it may take some time, but let's start.
but you have
Yeah,
to start. You have to start somewhere.
you have to start
Um,
somewhere.
okay, so Crystal, let's pull on that piece that you just mentioned a little bit. That like the dreaded F word for boards,
Yes.
fundraise, because you talked about this, and the reason that I was really excited to have you at Well Told was to kind of pivot the idea of fundraising for boards into really storytelling for boards. So, can you just like tell us a little bit about that? Maybe a bit of an appetizer as to what's coming with your conversation at Well Told.
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversations with board members who are like, "Oh my God, I could never ask anybody for money. That's just not who I am. I don't feel comfortable doing that." And then I'll just start asking them questions and like, tell me why you joined the board. Like, when did you realize that you really cared about this mission? What moment stands out for you in terms of your board experience? Like, what is something that you remember about serving on the board or being around this organization that really has touched your heart, that's made your heart beat fast? And then people will start telling me stories, and I'm like, that's it right there. Tell me that story, right? In such a way that I'm like, "Oh my God, this organization is amazing. Where's the link to give?" Right? And so I try to tell them, let's just disarm you and get you excited about telling your story about why you're involved. What's the best? Like I remember one time I was talking to a board member and I said, "Tell me, tell me your best memory." He started going into this details about how he helped a client and even 2 or 3 years after he was done working with her that they continue to be friends, and now she's graduated from college and she's a nurse and she's got 3 kids and they still get together for dinner, and I'm like, oh my God, that is a great story to show that you cared beyond what you were supposed to do, and now you're still in touch with this person years later. She's grown, she's an adult, and she still wants to be in your life. That shows impact, right? And so he's like, thank you for asking me to share that story. I hadn't shared it in a long time, and it makes me feel good just remembering it. And I said, that's it right there. That's it. You have to tell the story in such a way that people feel it, that we see it. We see that you love this mission. We see that the work has changed, not only you, but has changed the people that you're serving. And that's what's going to make people want to give. If people want to help.
So, how do you instill that confidence in them? Because it's I think it's one thing to have folks remember why
Hmm.
they started. But then to actually form that into a way that you can invite others into it doesn't seem like the easiest task. And maybe I'm speaking too much for my Midwestern brothers and sisters here, but like Midwest, we don't like to brag, right? And we don't like to talk about all the incredible things that we're doing because we were taught at a very young age that it's rude. But I think that also limits us in a lot of ways, especially our board members. It limits us to say, like, hey, you should be involved in this thing because I'm involved, and I'm involved because of that origin story that you just kind of talked about. So how do you go about instilling confidence? Or do you just have to like beat him over the head and say, just go out and do the damn thing?
Well, you know what? There's a level of confidence involved, but there's just a level of determination too. Like I always start off by asking if you had to rate your passion for the organization on a scale from 1 to 10, what would it be? And I get, oh, it's 10, it's 9, it's 8. And I said, things that you're passionate about, that you care deeply about, you will advocate for. I mean, just think about, a time when you had to go to traffic court and fight a ticket that you felt that you were given erroneously, right? And you're going to go in there, you're going to make your case in front of the judge as to why you should not pay. It's just a principle. You could pay the $55, but you want to go in there and you want to make your point. Like go in there with that kind of passion, right? And people, you might still have to pay it, but go in there with that kind of passion and people will actually feel it. So sometimes I say you got to feel the fear and do it anyway, because I know as a fundraiser, there were plenty of times where I had butterflies in my stomach and I was like, oh my God, is this going to go the way I want? But I just started thinking about, is a kid going to eat today because of what I'm doing? Right? Is a
That's a
pet
great frame.
I mean, is a pet going to be taken care of today because of what I'm doing, right? Is the environment going to be better today because the fact that I'm about to walk into this room and ask this person for money? And when you start thinking about that as opposed to your own fear, you realize, okay, let me swallow. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to make the ask, and I'm just going to let people know that. And, asking is not imposing. It's not beating people over the head. It's not, it's inviting. It's usually a yes or no.
Yeah.
And if it's no, it's not the end of the world. You haven't broken any laws or rules, right? And so I just try to, what's the worst thing that could happen if you ask for someone for money? They say no. Okay. And if they say no, have what? It's
We talk
okay. We get
we
no's in our lives all the time.
well, and here's what's interesting about that, is like is and we talk about this from like, we're not a nonprofit, right? We're a business, but in the business development process, we have a favorite word, and that is yes, right? Our second favorite word, no, because our least favorite word is maybe.
Mm,
Right? And so no's are not a bad thing. They're
yeah.
actually a definitive, they're actually a gift that says, "Hey, I don't need to focus on this thing right now. I can keep going."
Yep, exactly, exactly. In our business, no is not no forever.
No.
People a lot of times, particularly if you're making a large ask, and most of the times our board members might be out on an ask with an executive director or CEO on a big ask, but himself are not doing it by themselves. They're usually doing it in collaboration with some kind of staff person. And in that particular case, he or she may or may not be making the ask, right? But but on big ask, if they said no, a lot of times they'll give you the reason. My daughter's getting married. My 2 kids in college. We're about to retire. Our money is about to change. My wife is ill. Whatever it is, and hopefully you will have known some of this before you go in and make the ask anyway. But whatever they rebut with at the time, just of course acknowledge that. Thank them for at least considering it, and just say, would it be okay? In 6 months, if we could have another conversation to see if things have changed and they feel differently, maybe we can circle back to this. And a lot
Do
of times
you
people will say yes. Sure, we could talk in
Yeah.
6 months or a year or whatever. Yeah.
Do you have a tip or a trick that gets people out of the mindset that, like, I'm asking for myself versus I'm asking on behalf of all of the folks who are going to benefit from this mission?
Yeah, I probably have a whole twisted philosophy about this because I don't believe it's your money in the first place,
Right.
Max. I do believe that this is money that, that God with your skill sets and your experience that you've earned, but God provided for you. And I kind of feel like you can't take it with you. God, He blessed you with it. And what He wants, I mean, for some people who are not spiritual, but what He wants is He wants you to pour back. He wants you to pour back and give back. You've been blessed beyond your means, probably. And there are a lot of folks who don't have, access to the resources and, everything that you have. And so, on an ethical, moral case, it makes sense that you would give back. But I just let folks know, you know, $50 to you might not seem like a big deal. Like you go out and blow $50 on a cup of, Starbucks or whatever. That $50 could help a kid get some school supplies. Right. And so and
I'll
so
never
just think about it. It's so important for people to understand that it's not even really about the amount. It's really about the heart. Giving makes people feel good. $50 added up, 10 million times, it's a lot of money, right? And so while you might think your little $50 is not going to make a difference, it really will. And trust that the work that we're doing is really helping, because that my job is to show you that I'm investing the money where we said it was going to be invested. But trust that this money is really supporting the community that and the best thing to do is to get out in that community and interact with those people.
Mm.
Right? And so, when
Mhm.
you meet the kids, when you meet the families, when you meet the pets, and you realize, oh my God, these kids are wonderful. These families are, oh, this could have been me, or it was me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I was this kid who struggled in school academically. And now look at me, I'm a successful lawyer. Right? I wish somebody was there for me when I was in that position. And so I think, trying to put them in the person's shoes also helps. And you can do that by helping them to see and feel some connection with them.
What do you think? Maybe part of it is like making sure that we understand their story. But what do you think, like as executive directors and development directors, what is our first misstep with board members?
Thinking that they know what you need, right? Thinking
Oh,
because they signed up to, I signed up to be on the board. I'm so excited to be on the board. I come into the room the first meeting, and you expect me to know about, CRM technology. I don't know anything about that, right? And so I think, I think it's lack of preparation, and you not sharing your story and the story of the organization with them enough so that they feel confident to go out and tell the story themselves, right? And that means mission. That means the testimonies, the videos, all the things that we know matter. Making sure that they have all those tools so that they can go out there and do a good job. And because what they'll come to me, CEOs will come to me and say, oh, my board is lame, they're not doing anything, and I'm like, oh, really? Okay, well, what what kind of preparation did they get? What kind of training did they get? Was there any orientation or anything when they first rolled on? Well, we have a board book. Yeah.
that nobody's ever read.
Right. And so I said, well, did you introduce them to staff, some of the staff members? Was there a mission moment? Have they been down to the shelter? Like, have you given them a full onboarding? Well, some people have been down to the shelter. I can't remember if everybody got an onboarding. I can't, and I'm just thinking, because this has to be consistent, right? This has to be consistent. And I think training is continual. And I always, I have something called board bites, right? And so I always tell my clients that at every board meeting there should be some kind of bite about board training and development, whatever that is, just a little bite. It's just a smidge on the agenda. Like we're going to take 2 minutes to talk about board recruitment, right? We're going to have two board members that are going to be rolling off at the end of the year. Let me tell you a little something about board recruitment and what we should be doing to prepare. Right? Like, let's not wait until the last minute when the seats are vacant. Now we're scrambling, trying to, how do we put people in the pipeline, the right people in the pipeline, so that when a board seat opens up, we have some folks to call, as opposed to us now trying to figure out how we're going to put an announcement on LinkedIn. We're all scrambling, trying to take out our phones, trying to find people. Like, don't do that. Right.
Mm.
But those are the kind of little things that you can prep your board meeting and just put it on the agenda for 3 minutes and then keep it moving. And then at the next board meeting, give them another bite, right? And so they're getting a little bit of training throughout the year, and then they'll have the big training at the board retreat. But I think you have to prepare them, give them the tools, give them the knowledge, give them the skill sets, role play with them, give them the scripts because they don't know what to say.
No.
Right? And so you have to, they can ad lib it in their own voice, but tell them this is the reason why we're saying this. This is what we hope to gain from you saying this. You can change it or tweak it a little bit so that it sounds natural for you. But we want you to stay pretty much on stay focused on what we're trying to accomplish here. But give them the information. Because a lot of times board members say to me, I don't know what they want me to do. I
Mm.
want to help. I went to the board meeting, but now what? What am I supposed to do in between board meetings? No one's communicating with me. I haven't seen a newsletter. I haven't been invited to any of this. Like, this is the kind of stuff. And so it takes work Just like it takes work to build relationships with potential donors, it takes work to build relationships with your board. It's almost a full-time job.
So
And
let's role play that a little bit because
yeah,
I'm you mentioned that idea of role play, and I love that. So, like, I'm an executive director. I'm a CEO of a nonprofit, right? And I have this new board or fairly new board, and I'm coming with a mindset that they don't. It's filled with politicians and lawyers and educators and people that have these like high stakes jobs, and I'm like, well, I don't want to burden them with another thing. What are you going to say to me?
yeah, I'm going to say to you that they've made a commitment to serve, and a board service should not be seen as a burden. It should be seen as enjoyable, meaningful work, right?
Yes.
It is a commitment. And so they're here because they want to help. So don't see it as a
They've
burden.
opted in. They've
They
opted
opted in.
in.
They've checked the box.
So, okay, you talk about accountability as a part of good governance. For
Hmm.
people that hear that word and maybe tense up, that accountability word, and then tense up a little bit, how do you reframe accountability so it feels like support instead of a threat?
And one of the questions I always ask my clients is, does your board assess itself at the end of the year? Does it assess its performance? Does it assess its behavior? Does it assess the culture that you've created? And I get these blank stares. Like anything else, if you're in a job, you get a performance evaluation at the end of the year, right? So I just think it's really important. Accountability is so important because if we don't do those things, we don't know if we're really accomplishing the goals that we set out at the beginning of the year, right? And accountability can look like, I'm just calling the executive director to see how he or she is doing. And is there
Mm,
anything I can take you for office? Because that leadership work at that level, the executive director it's hard work.
yeah.
It's hard work. And I think sometimes board members don't know and understand. If you work in business or lawyer, you might not know what nonprofit work looks like. And so just calling the board members just to say, I'm checking in today, I'm off today. I wanted to call and check in on you to see how you're doing. Is there anything that I can take off your plate today? Is there any funders you're going to be speaking to that perhaps I can speak with you with them? Do you need me to send a thank you note, make a call, whatever? That's being accountable. That's showing up even when she didn't ask, right? That's being proactive, right? And on the other hand, it's incumbent on the CEO to reach out and let people know what she needs or what he needs. But as a board member, being accountable means I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up to board meetings. I'm going to show up to the office. I'm going to show up to support the executive director. And it shouldn't be burdensome. It should be something that you enjoy doing.
So it's important for the board members individually to be offering help. But then there's also a responsibility on the executive director, development director, whoever it is, to receive that help
Yes,
and say yes
absolutely.
and.
Yes.
So can you talk about that a little bit? Because I feel like there might be some executive directors that are like, well, no, that's my job. And so I have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a fine balance. We certainly don't want any micromanaging going on. We don't want boards involved in operational stuff, right? That's not what boards are supposed to do. I'm just talking about emotional support for the executive director. That example that I gave was emotional support. I'm here for you if you need me today. I know you're busy. I know you're overwhelmed. You might be understaffed. I just want to let you know that if you need anything today, I'm here for you. That's more emotional than I think anything else. But I think it is incumbent on the CEO on the board or the CEO to let the board know these are the things I need from you. This will help me be a stronger leader, but I do think the board needs to be accountable to reach out and let him or her know I'm here for you. So
Mm,
besides just showing up to meetings, right, engaging in meetings, offering good ideas, sometimes dissenting, right? You don't have to agree with every single thing. Sometimes it's okay to say I don't agree. So I think it's really important that there are multiple ways that boards can show up and be accountable. Showing up, making their gift, supporting the executive director, leaning in, supporting other board members, creating a culture where everyone feels like this is good work and I love being here. All that is part of accountability for boards.
I think one of the like stupidly simple things that you had mentioned on the podcast that I first met you through, which was one of our speakers from last year's Well Told, John McCoy, and the We Are for
Yes.
Good
Yes.
podcast, was you're like, I just make memos in my phone and I just shoot out a text message. It's as simple as that. And I'm like, yes, it is like as simple as that. Like, use the reminders, use the tools. You don't need a big expensive CRM to like put in your phone like, hey, remind me every 6 weeks to check in with my executive director, with my CEO, and just say, hey, how are things going? Because it can still feel very organic, but you can systemize it.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm the chair of a board and I communicate with my board all the time. I give
Yeah.
them updates. If it's someone's birthday, I'll send out a reminder that so and so is enjoying a birthday today, or someone is having had a baby today. Or continually cultivating relationships with my board so that when that board meeting date shows up, they're going to be there. So
Yeah.
I've been reaching out and I show that I care.
I think people forget that like a board is a little community of people that said, "Hey, we believe in this thing together." And like you have the ability to make that into something more than just like a resume builder or more than
Yeah.
just an obituary patter to say like, "Hey, like I can be friends with these folks and I can
Uh-huh.
create community with these folks." So exactly what you're talking about where it's like, "Hey, we can be friends too in
Yeah.
addition to this great work that we're doing together."
Who sets the tone for doing that, right? Like the executive director and the board chair have to set the tone with by modeling that and by saying by kind of empowering the board that this is the community that we want and we can create that community together. Like so I often tell my boards to create a culture statement. This is how we want to be. This is how we want to interact with each other. Not only are we going to do serious work, but we're going to have fun. We're going to be collegial. This is going to be meaningful work. We're going to be open to debate. Like you create your culture statement and remind everyone this is how we are. This is what community feels like to us, right? And it's important for you to put it in writing because sometimes people forget and you just have to send them. And particularly if someone is disrespectful or they're offensive, you might want to send that culture statement out. Say, here's a reminder of how we act and how we navigate each other when we're together, right? And those kinds of behaviors are not going to be accepted or tolerated. And
I
that's just
love
a nice way of doing it without having to tell people off or anything like that.
I love that because again, it's that letting people opt in. Oh. Okay, so we're approaching the end of
Okay.
our time together, at least for today, because I'm
Okay.
so excited to have you in person so I can give you a squeeze. But our two closing questions. One, this is a storytelling podcast, right? We believe stories shape the way that we show up. And so I'm curious, what is one story from your life or your work that still guides how you show up?
Oh, wow. Well, I will tell you, as a fundraiser, I remember being in a room with a family who was endowing a scholarship in the name of a loved one who had passed away. And the work had begun with the endowment years before I came on board, and I found the money sitting in an account, and I decided to reach out to that family and say, "Listen, I this money is sitting here. I know it's not enough to endow right now, but I think if we start raising money and telling stories about who your loved one was and why she was important on this campus," I was working at a university, we can raise enough money. And get the scholarship endowed. It was years after they had started. She had been passed now 10 years or so, and that's what we did. You know, I did my research to find out who she was. I went and talked to her professors. I called some of the alumni who she was friends with back then. Tell me who she is. Why was she? And we started telling the story to everybody on campus. People, current students who didn't even, wasn't even there when she was there, right? And getting everyone excited about this family who was trying to make this endowment happen in her name. And then the day that the check was cut and we were able to present it to the college president, that whole family was in the room. And you know, they were crying and just thanking me for bringing this to fruition. And I remember thinking to myself, this is why I do the work, right? This is why, I mean, people's lives were changed. This family's lives were touched, and I was a small part of that, right? And so for me, whenever I think about doing something that might cause me a little fear or a little hesitation, I think about that story. Feel the fear and do it anyway. You don't know how what you're doing, your advocacy, your voice, you don't know how it's going to impact or change someone's life. Just being able to tell a great story could change someone's life. And so be honest, be authentic, be passionate, and let people know why it impacted you because people want to know what you believe. I believe this organization exists because, and then share why. And people will lean in and they will listen and they will consider, do I feel the same way? Does it hit me the same way that it hit her? Actually, it does. I'm going to make a donation.
Mm. I love that. It's purpose over perfection. And so that brings us to our final question.
Yes.
What's one simple good thing that you would leave people with? This could be a piece of wisdom or a reminder that helps them lead with purpose.
Oh, to take a deep breath. The world is still good. I think we have to hear that right now, that most people in the world are still good-hearted, well-meaning people. There are enough of the haters. We know they're out there, but there's still enough good-hearted people that gives us hope and promise that, you know, we leave this planet to our children. And I want to, when it's my time to say goodbye, I want to know that I'm leaving this world in good hands for my son, who's a teenager, who's 16. But when he becomes, a grown man and I may or may not be here, I want to know that I've done my part and that the people who are still here with him are still the same good-hearted people that are here today. And so I just think sometimes we feel pessimistic, we feel hopeless about what we hear and see on the news, but the world is still good, people are still good, and just believe that.
I don't know if you could hear it over the microphone, hopefully not. But the moment that you said that, and I also just took a deep breath because I think it's like such an excellent reminder that with all the noise that's being created, there's so much good. There's so much good in the world. There's so much good that needs to be shared. And that is the role of boards. That's a role of CEOs and that's a role of nonprofits is to share the good because there is so dang much good in the world.
Mhm. I agree. That's why I get up every day. I choose joy.
Christal, you're one of the good ones. Christal, if folks want to connect with you before the conference or if they're listening to this after the conference, where do they connect with Christal?
Yeah, my website is theboardpro.com. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Substack, I'm on Facebook, I'm all over the place. So Christal Cherry on LinkedIn, The Board Pro on Facebook, and on Substack.
Awesome. Christal, thank you so much for being on this episode of Tell Well the podcast. I'm so excited to see you coming up in April here in
Hey,
Fargo.
yes.
And thanks for choosing love. Thanks for choosing joy. Thanks for showing up in all those incredible ways.
Thank you, Max, for having me. This was great.
Thanks for spending some time with us today. I hope this conversation gave you something useful to take back to your work. If you're looking for more resources on storytelling, strategy, and building communications that actually move people to action, head on over to WeTellWell.com. We've got guides, case stories, and plenty of ways to dig deeper. And if you're at a point where you're ready to get serious about clarifying your message or telling your story in a bigger way, let's talk. You can book a planning call with our team right on the website. We'd love to hear what you're working on. One last thing. If this episode was helpful, share it with someone on your team or leave us a review. It really does help other mission-driven folks find the show. I'm Max Kringen. Thanks for listening to Tell Well the podcast. Now go tell your story well, because a well-told story can move your mission forward and change the world.